Hello and welcome back to Dry Conversations. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is Wayne Herring. Hey, Wayne.
Hey, Whitney. Good to be with you.
Glad to sit down and talk. This is, like many of the conversations, our first time having a talk at all. So
Right.
for myself and for everybody that's listening, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to recently?
Okay. I'm Wayne Herring, and I am a business coach. And so not everybody, as you alluded to off camera, can share about this, which I totally get. But I'm a business coach and the founder of something that I call Business Builder Camp, which is a collection of men who own businesses that meet together to help each other grow their businesses and to grow their lives. And that's just what I do, though, right? I have been blessed with 4 children, and I think we're talking about dry conversations, right? So thankfully, I have been sober since June 7th of 07. I live in Pennsylvania. It's snowy here today. I decided to try to drive my truck up into the snow, and so it's parked right out there, stuck. And after we're done, I'll go do some shoveling, and I know that I'll probably be able to free that up. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit about life.
That's great. I love that you got your truck out. I live in Tennessee, Southern Tennessee, so I would never, but I love hearing stories and seeing the courage of other people in different climates. That you mentioned you've been sober for quite some time. I mean, that's more than double, I think, what I've got at this point. And so, I love to hear stories from all walks of life, all lengths of sobriety, and kick off with what happened, because most people don't choose sobriety because it sounds like fun.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, so part of my story is my dad got sober when I was 4, and he speaks of that pretty openly. So I'm good with saying that. Dad got sober when I was 4, and I grew up with my grandparents because of my mom left when I was 6 months old. Dad was just not in a place to really be a dad at that moment. Got sober when I was 4. He then was in my life and was very present, but by that time I was so established with my grandparents that I stayed there, but he was around and supportive. I kind of fast forward to 2007. I had 2 children by that time, and I sensed that that life was unmanageable, or I knew life was unmanageable. I sensed it might have something to do with alcohol, or that alcohol wasn't particularly helpful to what was going on. However, I always kept my dad and his sober friends at arm's length, and I wasn't going to ever need that, and I was good. And in at the time, I did go and pursue sobriety. I started to realize that I could indeed not conquer this on my own, even though I wanted to be able to. So I understood that it was causing problems in my life first, but then, I thought like a lot of other problems that had come up in life, that I should be able to solve it, should be able to fix it, should be able to use willpower to not continue with those behaviors. And I just was not very successful on my own. So
Yeah. What was that experience like, finding community? Because you had it modeled for you, but I think it's very different than when you're in the place that it is a necessary part of the journey to be able to move forward in life at all.
Yeah. So I tried being sober by myself without any kind of community or any other help. And as I said, but I mean, I actually I did it for 7 months. I had a 7-month period where something really bad had happened, really bad to me in my work world. I had a situation where I was not able to run a meeting that I was supposed to lead. And I was working in a family business. So I was working with my dad at the time, and he ran the meeting. And I then got on a plane and went to a different state to go work with a salesperson, and decided in the car on the way to the airport that this was it. And I was never going to drink again because this was embarrassing. And my family was such that, like, it was nobody had judgments about drinking, but if it gets in the way of your work, like, that is not honorable. And
Yeah.
okay, so I quit for 7 months on my own. It was awful. It was terrible. Because I was just not right in the head at that time. I was only dry, which I dry conversation. So not that that's bad, but for me, that was not pleasant. It wasn't a pleasant
Yeah.
experience at all. And I would watch what other people were drinking, and eventually I had a non-alcoholic beer because I felt some social pressure, and that very quickly that became a lot of non-alcoholic beer, which very quickly became, surely I could have one drink with dinner because as long as it's with food, I'll be okay.
Sure.
And so all that doing that on my own was really hard. And when I did go join other people who also were seeking sobriety, that was your question, what was it like to find community? It was like, I'm not alone, right? Like, I'm
Yep.
not alone, and there's other people to do this with, and it doesn't have to be miserable, and it hasn't been since that time.
Man, what sat with me in that is the negotiation with yourself of like, oh, well, surely I could do this. And
Right.
oh, of course, like, I know enough now to think that I could handle things because, good heavens, I did that for so long before trying to just stop. Or, like, I bet if I do it for 3 months, I'll really get my life back on track. And by 4 months, my life was derailed all over again.
Yeah, I understand. I
And
understand.
to your point about being dry, like, I also tried the whole, like, just do it and see what happens, not really put in, like, the effort or the work to heal or to change, just
Mhm.
stop the thing, and it is miserable. Like, I totally understand, that term "dry drunk"
Yeah.
now because of that, and so it sounds like you had that experience too.
Oh, definitely. In spades, for
So
sure.
for people that maybe don't, like, understand what that is, could you elaborate on that, like, what that space was like for you?
Yeah, well, as you said, it was not drinking, but not being healed. And you know, it was a long time ago. And so sometimes, Whitney, it's hard to remember. Love your child in the background. That's so cool. I it's hard to remember what it was like, but I was wound up like all the time. I was um all the emotions, angry, resentful, um I don't know, spiteful, jealous, discontent, and that's what ran my life all the time. um People did things to me all the time, and as but I was no longer drinking, and so I didn't have my medication that actually used to make things feel good, right? For a while, like, it caused a lot of problems. But alcohol, when I was on the road, I was traveling a lot when I got sober, and I was traveling a lot when I was in that dry drunk kind of state. And I used to be able to have a lot of problems during the day, which of course were of everybody else's doing and not my own. And then I could go get wasted at night, and that quieted all the voices, that everything went away. I became, loosey goosey. And so then take the alcohol away from that, and, like, what a miserable existence, really. Not being able to sleep, still thinking that it's everybody else's fault, whatever's, I don't even know what was so damn bad, really. Life was not, it, from this point of view, it wasn't so bad. I don't know why I was so upset, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit more about that.
But I think it's, like, exacerbated, like, the feelings of everything feels terrible, and I think a lot of that is from my experience, it was that mirror being held up in front of me of, like, everything that I was experiencing felt terrible because I felt terrible. And
Okay.
not like, oh, the whole world is on fire around me. But from my lens, the lens I was looking through was on fire. So of course, everything that I looked at felt that way as well.
If I would have got that truck stuck in the snow, so I live on this little 20-acre farm. I mean, I purposely decided I want to see if I can make it up the hill right there, because I'd like to get some firewood out of the woods up there. And I wonder if I can drive through that snow. So I went in there a couple hours ago. The truck gets stuck, and it's just not a big deal. Like, I'm going to go shovel and get that thing out. When I
Yeah.
was in that state, when I was in that other state, I would have been mad at myself. Mother effing Wayne, how stupid am I to do that? I'd have been kicking the tires because somehow they suck and it's their fault. Like, I don't know. That's how life used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And then, of course, like you got to then go drink to drown the anger about it all.
Well,
And
it's
for
hard to get a
me,
truck unstuck without beer, I would think, right?
yeah,
So, or
honestly,
whatever.
I mean, I would
Water.
say borderline impossible.
Right, right, right.
But then I feel like, was there a tipping point where you're like, okay, enough is enough of trying to, because enough is enough with the alcohol, and then enough is enough with trying to white knuckle it. Was there something that happened, a conversation, like what made you decide to take that incredibly vulnerable step of reaching out to somebody or showing up somewhere?
Yeah, so remember, I had recovery and resources at arm's length, and I knew it. My dad was there at
Yeah.
that time when I had gone through the period of not drinking on my own. He was not preachy. He just said, "Hey, if you ever get to a point where you want some help, I want you to know that I'm here, and the resources I used
Mm-hmm.
to get sober are here. And look, I'm being respectful of like how I say this, like, but there's lots of tools out there that you can go find, and programs that you can seek out to get sobriety." So I knew that was there. And then as I got back into this drinking world, it was this ping pong thing where I would then quit for a couple weeks, then I would quit for a couple days. So, I start to get suspicious, like, okay, yeah, there's a pattern here and I'm not able to do it. And then, so it's that feeling of like, maybe I can't handle this, combined with, um, I did not like, I had two kids at home. I was traveling for work. I did not like the guy that I had turned into. That I did not at some point view that this was the real me, that
Yeah.
is like trying to be out of town, putting cash in a bag before I go out of town to drink, so that um, the kids, my children's mother, who I was married to at that time, wouldn't know how much was on the credit card and how much I was spending in the bar. There was a lot of those things going on that I ultimately thought, this is not who I don't think this is who I am at the core, but I can't stop doing these things, and something has to give. And I was out of town in North Carolina, ironically very close to where my mom, who had left at 6 months old, turned out to live, which I reconnected with her later after sobriety. And I had a particularly bad night where I did not intend to go out and drink. I did not intend for there to be bad consequences, driving under the influence, blackout, any of that stuff. That's not what that week I set out to not drink all week. And this happened
Mhm.
once again. And when I kind of came to and woke up the next morning, I resolved in that moment, I asked God for help, and I went to a computer to start looking for where there would be gatherings of sober people at
Yeah.
home when I got home. And I made a phone call to my dad. And I made a phone call to my dad and I said, "Hey, can we meet tomorrow to go for a run?" And I then cried throughout the rest of the day as I did the rest of my work out of town in North Carolina. I got on a plane, came home with the intention of meeting him the following morning to tell him that I need help and what's really going on. And I was on the plane ride home and I started And on the plane home, I had this thought that if the plane would go down, I don't know, I was not thinking about the other passengers apparently, but I thought if the plane went down, my family would be better off without me.
Mm.
So I wouldn't say it was suicidal ideation, but it was very close to
Yeah.
those kind of thoughts. And I started driving home from the airport, and I was like, you know what? I can probably do this. Like, just one more try. Like, maybe I should just go running with dad tomorrow. I shouldn't tell him what's really going on. I shouldn't give him the whole truth. And on the radio came Johnny Cash playing a cover of I Won't Back Down. And I heard that song, and I had seen the movie. I knew about Johnny Cash's history of drug use and his later recovery. And I was like, this must be a sign. I need to follow through with this. And I need to tell dad what's up. And I showed up the next morning to run in my jeans with 2 cups of coffee. And he said, I guess we're not going running. And I was like, no. So anyway, that may be more than what you asked for, but
No, that's fantastic. I mean, because I feel like every story is different but the same. You know, like that we all, I think, come in defeated in some capacity with emotions that have drug us down the street. And for some people it's their anger, for some it's their envy, for, and it I think it's refreshing to hear, that you felt like the world would be better off without you, because I felt that way too. But I felt broken because I felt that way of like, oh, that's a shameful, not normal thing. We need to keep that to ourselves. Also bury that really deep, but I can't bury it in the bottle because I'm not supposed to be drinking. So now, like, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was allowed to like walk into a room, put that thought on a table and be like, that's too heavy for me to carry by myself. And also I don't
Right.
want to walk out of here with it. So I'm going to leave that right here. I had no idea that I was allowed to do that. And then I will say I got a little addicted to that feeling of like, all right, we're going to start just like, because I carried it for so long by myself.
Sure.
And then there was this like new feeling of freedom where that just kind of being like uninhibited by some of these fears.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
It's huge. And so that was many years ago. And I'm curious how that journey has been over time, because there is a real fear, I would say. And, I'll admit this, you don't think I've talked about this on the show before, but this past year, I have known 3 people who are between 18 and 20 years who decided to drink again. And I just surpassed 7 years. And there's a part of me that's like, no, like that's crazy to me to get to that point, but it can happen at any time. So I'm wondering I imagine it can't be consistently, things are always getting better and I'm always on fire for whatever program I'm working to stay sober.
Yeah, for sure. Along the way, there's been lulls internally, lower spots internally. Along the way, there was at least one period where I feel like I was probably in real danger of picking up the first drink. And I'm fortunate to have a close group of guy friends that I text with frequently, talk to on the phone weekly, and see in a room somewhere every couple weeks kind of thing. So I've kept a close group of friends that at that particular time when things were out of whack in my head and my thinking and just getting agitated again and life not looking at things through a victim lens a lot of times instead of an owner lens, a lot of that was going on. And I had a good friend who was able to say, what's up, man? Like, what is going on? And, sometimes people ask me a question like that and I might say, oh, I don't know, just a little bit uncomfortable right now. But in that moment, I was able to say, look, I think I've regressed. I think this is what's going on. I think I need to get back more consistent practice. I think it wouldn't hurt for you and I to go through some of the things that I did on a first time around of taking a look at my own feelings and angers and hurts and all those things. And I did start over in that sense. And but that friend really carried me through. He ended up passing away a couple of years ago, and another really good friend of his, really, so he was were working, spending a lot of time with two of us, and we sort of knew each other peripherally, and we went together. I'm in Pennsylvania. We went together to Buffalo, New York, where he had moved up there. He was stricken with cancer, and the two of us, my good friend and I, took a drive up there and spent some time with him over just in that day. But the long drive and the drive back, and then him passing away a couple weeks later, this guy and I, it's like been transferred, and now the two of us are really tight, and the two of us don't talk a lot about sobriety anymore. We talk a lot about life. He's been through a divorce. I've been through a divorce. I've been through a child who was very ill and hospitalized, and I was really fearful for her life. These life things happen. Um, some of the divorce was had things from my sobriety journey had to do with it. Like, I have a huge part in that. But so that friend and I, and now he's back together with the person that I'm building a relationship with, a new person, and we talk very openly about emotions, feelings, what's going on, how to be a better human, how we totally F up sometimes, and we're like assholes. And it having a small group of people that understand sobriety and understand the framework of how to stay on the beam in my life, but to also talk about personal things is amazing. And I don't think that I'm, to your point about, like, my first mentor, sponsor, right? He died. He had a drink after he was probably 15 years sober when he had a drink, and he could never get it back together again. And I'm no different than him, right? So you even just saying that people who are 18 to 20 years is, I mean, thanks, because I have to remember that. And I know my girlfriend, who's really amazing and everything, she's is not a recovering person, and yet she's a normie, kind of thing, which
I
is
have one of
great.
those.
Yeah. And one of the things, I don't know, maybe at this stage in my life, maybe being 50, maybe because she's really super open, accepting, listens. Like, I've been able, she asked initially, like, okay, so you're sober, like, will I be able to have drinks with my friends? Like, and in your presence? And I'm like, yeah, totally. And I will, like, I will share with you things that, like, are okay for me and things that are not. And then I go back, and, like, I got my friend that I can talk to about some of those things, And so I can't, I don't, everybody has their own path and their own thing. I can be around alcohol now. However, it has, like, I can't go sit at a bar and have rows of bottles and people doing their thing. Like, I can't do that. I just know, like, I know what is okay and what's not.
Yeah. And I think that line, I think it changes over time, because I know, like, early on I absolutely couldn't.
Absolutely.
And
Me
now,
neither.
yeah, and I'm married to a normie. And it's one of those, like, we just have this unspoken thing where, if we're going to be around each other, I can't smell it on your breath. Like, that's just, but I travel for work. And so maybe once or twice a year, he'll, like, do a guy's dinner, and he loves a good margarita, so he'll go do that, and that's fine. I
Yeah,
encourage it. That's fantastic. He's not an alcoholic.
right.
But I can be around it in certain settings, but when it starts getting sloppy, or I start feeling like there comes a shift, and
Mhm.
anybody that has been to a bar or like a function kind of understands there's a time where there's a shift. And I
Sure.
usually like to use that as my exit. And I really appreciate having, time to like go take myself to dinner instead of
Yeah.
being around that, or an early night in and hitting the gym, especially early on when it was like it would be frustrating because I think I was trying to project my feelings on other people and try to make my sobriety part of their responsibility, which it's not.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
figuring out how to like cope with that, because early on, and I say early on, like my first year or so, when I was just trying to like learn how to exist as a
Yeah.
person,
Right.
um, that kind of stuff was offensive to me. And it did take a mentor, a sponsor, to really help me work through those feelings of like, you always have a game plan for yourself because your sobriety is your responsibility.
Mhm.
Remove yourself if you don't like it. We don't get to control other people or their good time or their whatever.
Yeah.
And that was news to me.
Yeah.
The world was supposed to revolve around me, but like you
Right.
said, that first to tap into that victim mentality,
Right.
it's
Right.
tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for anybody that is maybe um questioning, maybe starting to see some of those negative consequences, having those feelings, having those thoughts of like, my alcohol might be consumption might be
Mm.
part of this problem. What, from your experience, are like really concrete steps that somebody can take to see what else may be out there for them?
Help me understand. So I should know this, but like, tell me, people listening to this, are they often like sober curious? That's a new phrase, right? And or
It is.
maybe not that new, but I know like folks have said to me, hey, like I'm sober curious. Is that like who listens to this and what's helpful with what you
That's
just
a
said?
great question. This podcast is still really young,
Okay.
and really new. And I don't, a lot of the outreach is just like, thanks, I don't feel alone. And some people are
Mm.
pretty uncomfortable taking the conversation beyond that. I know one or two people have reached out to some of the guests. But I really want it to be for everyone, because there are people that are in your boat that are approaching 20 years that this kind of stuff is still relevant. It's kind of
Sure.
like that. To me, it kind of feels like a meeting on the go.
Yeah.
But then there are some people that are sober curious, and I've talked to one or two here that are like California sober and still trying to figure out like, is that sober enough? Is that really making the change that I
Mm.
want to see in myself? So I kind of think it's everything.
Yeah. So interestingly, in my business coaching work, so I'm working with people that and my work with them certainly has nothing to do with sobriety, right? They're coming because they want to grow their business, or maybe because their business is sucking up all their energy and they want to try to find some kind of life balance. Those are the kind of things I'm typically working on. However, of course, I'm pretty vulnerable and open, and my doing step work and being around other sober people and the conversations I talk about helps me to be there for other people in a variety of ways. This allows me to listen better, be present, which I'm grateful for. And so people end up hearing about that, and then they're in that place where they're like, maybe I want to try this, or maybe I want to explore sobriety. And hey, maybe Wayne, I think maybe I drink a lot. Maybe I'm like how you were, and or maybe I've tried to quit drinking and it hasn't worked. So I get to, I can think of myself and answer to what your question, or answer your question. I also get to observe other people, and I'm not the like teetotaler. What do you call that? Back what did shoot, like the amendment where we're not going to have alcohol and prohibition, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not a prohibitionist. I don't tell people they shouldn't drink. I mean, gosh, I don't know. Like the alcohol industry, I'm in business and it's a viable industry and lots of people can handle it. And I don't know. And like, yeah, obviously lots of people have a few. So we're talking about our loved ones, right? They have a few social drinks and they're fine.
Yeah.
So I don't tell anybody they ought to get sober or not. However, if you're curious about it and you think it might be a problem, then it's one of those, like, I guess, what do you got to lose in some sense? It's the whole, like, I was, this is like old wisdom of the people we hang out with, try this for 90 days. And if at the end of 90 days not working for you, we'll gladly refund all your misery, is what they would say. But I mean, that's a nice way of saying, like, you can try it. You can try experiments. You can try not drinking for 30 days or, I mean, really a lot of these programs and ways are simple. The program's simple, but not easy, or
Yeah.
the plan is simple, but not easy, right? The plan is don't drink today, period.
Yeah.
And then I wake up tomorrow and I won't drink today. And it's not easy, but it's really simple. The system
Yeah.
is I wake up and decide I won't drink today. So yeah, there's kind of what do you got to lose? Run an experiment, give it a shot. And I guess maybe partially there's many pathways to sobriety. Mine was to go meet with other people in a church basement that, I found by looking up meetings near me, or that's what you could do now. Back then it didn't work that way, but we can do that now. And I guess the thing is, it's scary to go somewhere for the first time. I totally get that. And yet when I went there, I felt a total sense of accepting and belonging. And that's what I would promise to people. And I do like, I guess my understanding is like Jelly Roll isn't completely sober or whatever, but he has some really good songs. Like, Nobody Comes In Here on a Winning Streak. And that, like, whatever I thought was so horrible that I had done, people, of course, like, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. Like, and
Yeah.
you find that kind of acceptance when you get around other sober people. So again, I don't know if I answer your question directly, but maybe so.
No. I mean, that's great. And, I guess to build off of that, because you have been pursuing a sober life for so long, and I'm sure experienced a lot of ups and downs and a lot of life changes along the way, what's one of or some of the biggest lessons that you've learned throughout your sobriety?
Stay connected, right? Like having a small group of sober friends that, and truly cultivating connection with them, calling them, talking to them, finding out what's current in their life, makes life more fun and enjoyable, and protects us from the first drink, I believe. And so I guess I don't take sobriety as it's not guaranteed, or it's not like that I could take my eye off the ball right now because of the dangers always. However, these things have worked for quite a long time. And not only have they kept me from a drink, but like I said, they've made life more fun. And so it's that close group of friends. So I got my close group of friends. The other thing is, Whitney, that I've gone to enough gatherings in enough little towns around where I live that I still stay visually. People know who I am. I know who they are, even outside of my core group. And I think that is a good thing. I tell you, I went through the divorce I mentioned started like the whole dissolving of marriage and my whole vision for the future, and kids coming back for Thanksgiving and gathering on the table here at the farm. That's what it felt like. All that like had come crashing down. And I went through a couple months of having panic attacks, not being able to sleep. And I wasn't being completely open and honest in the rooms I was going to about that. I just wasn't ready, and I was trying to fight for that. I was trying to keep that, and so I wasn't ready to publicly. And that's not public, right? It's but I just wasn't ready. I was talking to my closest friends, so that's where having that close friend group was important. But what I decided to do is go to a meeting that is 40 minutes away, where I knew I'd know a couple people, but not most of them. And I said, is anybody having a problem affecting their sobriety? And I dumped it all out there, partially because I'm connected enough, but also like far enough away. So, that's like maintaining habits, practices, helping other people get sober and helping them think through their own feelings, emotions, resentments, harms, making amends. So they're helping somebody else just deepens it. And when I do that, I'm going back through the same stuff myself. And then to watch other people get their life back together and become good dads and husbands, like, holy shit, like what could be better than and more fulfilling than that? So, and then I think the other thing, just for me, you talked about exercise, right? Like I think pursuing a life of continued connection to higher power, spirituality, whatever you call it, is something that like we need to do, but it's something that makes life so much better and helps you not get pissed off when you go your truck stuck. Like um be wanting to be healthy in all ways. And I don't know, like it just all goes together. And so one of the big things is, and when I had that period where I referred to that I was kind of a low period, I had stopped doing meditation reading in the morning. And I had kind of gotten disconnected from a lot of my friends, and I had stopped going and sitting my ass down for an hour with other people. And then my good friend Keith was like, I guess maybe you're cured, and I guess you probably don't need that anymore. And he was being totally sarcastic and loving. And but that morning routine for me, that taking a pause in the morning and doing some journaling, reading, meditation is key to sobriety and my practices there. But it just makes life so much better.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's like mind, spirit, and body. I think it's all connected. And yeah, that's why like I try to carve out a couple of days a week, my lunch break, going to the gym, or if it's nice outside, taking the dogs and going to the park for a little bit, like just to hit pause on like all the things I've got to do and remember the things that I get to do and start reframing that. And yeah, so I'm glad you shared that, because as somebody who I still feel like a baby in recovery, and hearing that's
a
like,
pretty good mindset. Like I can take a little bit of that too. Like, yeah, that's a good identity to have.
because I never want to feel like I have it all figured out. I never want to
It's
think
dangerous.
like, but so funny. It says you're cured. I love people with that sense of humor. Because it's like, oh, no. And the fact that I'm skipping out right now is proof that I'm not.
Right. Right.
It's good. If this is resonating with somebody and maybe they do have questions, would you be available for somebody to reach out and maybe connect with you?
Of
And if
course.
so, how would they do that?
Well, they could look for Wayne Herring Jr. on LinkedIn. I probably use that professionally. This is the social media that I use more than anything. So that's a good place. Probably on. Well, I would say my email address is my first name .herring, Wayne .herring at herringcoach, HERRINGCOACH.com. That's a good way to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to do that.
Well, it's already been 40 minutes, which is wild. I feel like I have so many more questions and we could keep going, so we may have to just have you back. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing part of your short story, being vulnerable and being really honest. I think that every story matters and every story can have an impact on somebody else and maybe save a life. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks for what you're doing and your work in the world and for creating the space and the questions.
Yeah. Like we said, community. There's another way to have it.
Great.
Well, Wayne, this has been fantastic. Thank you again. And to everybody else, we will see you next time.
All right. Take care.